What is going on, everyone? Your old buddy Jimmo back with Refinish Network, working on a 1978 Lincoln Mark V complete. We're going to spray this bad boy down. You may have already seen it if you've watched the unedited version, but I want to give you a rundown and talk a little bit about this job and give you some insight into my thought process here. So what you're looking at now is the vehicle ready, well, in the primed form. So it's been prepped, everything's been sanded down. But what we did here was applied some sealer to a few small spots, and then we applied a gray base coat to the entire vehicle. Now, you might wonder why we didn't put a sealer over the entire thing. If you have enough primer over the vehicle, then it's not really necessary. And I can see the thought process on why a sealer might have worked better here if you wanted that extra protection over all of your primer, but this vehicle had enough primer on it that wasn't a concern. So what we decided to do was just apply a gray base coat over it to give it a uniform color before we started applying our actual silver. Now here is a cool little device, the Alien Ray Gun, the anti-static gun. So this thing will remove any static buildup on the vehicle to prevent dust and whatever's in the booth lint from clinging to the side of the vehicle and needing to be either sanded out of the base coat or polished out of the clear afterwards. So I've actually had a lot of skeptical guys that put this thing in their hand and they've noticed a significant difference. And at the end of this job, I can tell you it was one of the cleanest jobs I've ever turned out. I don't know if it had to do with this little guy here or other factors, but just saying, it seems to do what it is advertised as doing. And on raw plastics, you notice a really big difference on having any static in them. So normally when you clean down a plastic bumper or whatever, you'll notice a bit of a static buildup, and that gets rid of it very quickly. Now on this job, the fine folks at Segola were kind enough to send me over some guns to try out, and we decided to break them in on this job here. So that's the Segola base coat gun. And it's there's a few things I really like about it off the hop, and that's well, starting off the regulator, that little twist regulator. I find that convenient. It's not very bulky, and the digital gauge in the middle is pretty slick. So I don't know if you can see, if you look for it in the center of the gun, you'll see a little circle, and that's actually a digital display. The only thing I don't like about it though is that it displays in bars, which us North American guys are not crazy about. The exact PSI is how my brain is programmed to work, but you know, I managed to figure it out and get that gun spraying, and it sprays pretty well. So we've got the base coat laying down, puts a nice wet amount of material out at once, and that's the way I like to spray. So on this job here, we started off usually on one of the sail panels and then crossed over. There was going to be a top going. There's going to be like a vinyl top that goes in that spot there. So if we had any imperfections, it would all be hidden by that canvas anyway. So that was our starting and stopping points. This was a large job, so that was a huge consideration. I wanted to minimize any polishing afterwards. So you want to try and decide where you can keep the product the wettest, the longest. Now I used a really slow dry and clear anyway. You'll see. So it wasn't a huge factor, but it's just a good practice to get into. And it was a little bit difficult just to get in a good rhythm and make sure that you're hitting every spot in this vehicle and in the most efficient sort of pattern as possible. It's got a big roof, a big trunk, and a huge hood. Just a massive front end on this thing. So it's a little bit bigger than jobs I'm used to spraying, but we got her figured out here. So you can see we've got this going down as even as possible. On the silvers, you always want to try to have a nice consistent overlap to avoid any mottling or blotching. This color was actually quite friendly to spray. I had zero issues with it, and we're using Glazerite 90 line waterborne base coat on it. Now it's been a pretty hectic summer, as anyone following me on Instagram might be up to speed on, but I'm sure you'll notice once the videos slow down that you know, I just get pretty caught up. These summer months are pretty hectic for me right now with my current position. I think I've talked a little bit about my work as a tech rep, supporting the BASF product line out in the field. And what tends to happen anyway during these 3-4 months in the summer is that painters start taking holidays, and we've got a pretty significant tech shortage up here. So we've got people either coming in to do temp work, they've got maybe a prepper trying to step up and handle the painting. A lot of different scenarios that require an awful lot of my time trying to get people up to speed. So that's what really consumes a lot of my time in the summer. But things are slowing down, so we're going to get fired up with some more wicked videos. And I talked a little bit about the 3M event I did. Well, I guess I didn't really talk about it, just a little teaser video. I'm going to talk about it. I'll show some pictures at the end, and I'll give you guys a quick update. But there's some cool stuff coming out on that, so you can look forward to it. And yeah, so here we are hosing away with our Segola. Now, one thing I should mention with this Segola, not so much the Segola, but the setup that we have here, and it has the 1/4-inch fitting on the bottom of the gun, which drives me absolutely ballistic. It's just one of those things. The overwhelming majority of the shops that I'll go to, they'll have, they don't have top of the line booths for starters. It's pretty rare that they'll have a brand new booth that is just immaculate, and their air filtration systems might not be ideal. And then to top it off there, they've got the 1/4-inch fitting. So that's one thing that's pretty easy to fix, is just swap out the coupler and the fitting. But generally when I'm going in there to spray one job, that's not what I would do. So the HVLP fitting is going to allow for the guns to operate to their full potential. Now, this gun fired fine with the 1/4-inch fitting. I've sprayed it a lot more recently with the HVLP fittings, and it sprays just fantastic. So it's a very cool gun. It actually surpassed a lot of my expectations. I didn't really have anything set for it, so I think it's a Segola 4600 series gun. Both the base coat gun and the clear coat gun have been incredible. I've had a lot of good feedback from people that I've lent it out to. So very cool gun, and yeah, I've been very happy with it. So I'm sure you'll see that in more videos to come. Now, the one gun that I have to get my hands on, and it's going to sound kind of funny, it sounds funny just thinking about it, is the matte coat base coat gun or paint gun of some sort. Just because my good friend Gabe over at Motivated Painters has been going on about it, and he says this thing's just blowing him away. It just sounds very odd to me, but hey, I'm open to anything, so I'm going to have to get down there again soon and give that a whirl. I was just out with him last week, and his channel is gaining some momentum. It's a great channel. You can check out the video we did together recently, and there's a lot of fun working with him, so I'm sure there'll be more of that to come, and more collabs, I think, in general with a lot of people. So you can look forward to some cool stuff. That's what I can say. Let's get back to focusing on this guy here. So looks like we have all the base coat got down now, and we're checking for coverage. Now, it is best to check for coverage with the booth lights off. You'll see a lot more if you turn your lights off and then have a quick go over everything. Now, sometimes that can be an issue, because I know some of the older booths with their lighting systems, they can take like 10 minutes to come on, and they warm up, and it can be a pain. So it wouldn't be a very productive way to do things throughout the course of a day. But if you can just flick your lights on and off real quick, then that's not going to be an issue. And then if you have your fancy ray gun, go grab that and run over it one more time. So on this job, what we did, after every time we tacked it off, we'd hit it with this ray gun, and that would remove all the static. Deionization, I believe, is the term that they used for this. Now, I don't want to try and get too technical, because I don't know how the inner workings of this machine exactly work, but it removes the static. That's the main selling point for me, and my main takeaway. So you could probably just do this at the beginning of the job, but it will continue to build up static every time you run the tack cloth over it, and just sitting in there with the air running over it, just flowing past it, it's going to build static as well. So it's not the worst thing in the world to do, but if you're in a pretty high production shop, it might be overkill. I guess you have to weigh that out against how that's affecting your polishing times and what it's saving you. But yeah, anyway, it's a pretty cool little device. I think they're going to run between $2,500, $3,000. I don't want to get too specific, because I know a lot of people watching are from the U.S., and most of the numbers I'm probably thinking of are Canadian. So just look it up yourself. All right. Now, here is our Segola 4600 clear coat gun. Now, what I really like about this gun is that it just throws the clear on really quick. It just fires it on there, atomizes it well with a nice fine texture. It puts the product on quickly, which I really love. Which can be dangerous too, I'm sure, with getting sags and whatnot. But we did pretty well on this job here, and overall, it's been pretty good to me. The regulator was okay. I kind of wish it had the digital setup and the same kind of little screw style at the bottom, but all in all, that's it did a really good job. So these guns, they were pretty cool. So again, this is a big job, and we're gonna have some challenging curbs and whatnot to try and contend with. So it's gonna be more important with your starting and stopping times, depending on how slow your clear is. And here we go. Keep loading on more and more. You want to have a few of those ready to go. Different PPS cups full of clear, and you can just anytime you run out, you want to get changed over as quickly as possible, because as that clear is drying, it's going to be harder to melt that clear back in. So I've explained this before in terms, it's kind of like spraying melted wax, and you kind of want to get everything to flow out all at once. And if your wax starts to dry a little bit too early, then anything you put over top of that is gonna land differently and not bind together as one coating, and that's gonna result in some dry spray where you're gonna need to do some polishing. So you can slow that down. You can make your wax sort of stay liquid longer by using a slower hardener. You can use slower reducers. You can even use a flex additive sometimes, and that'll make your clear a lot slower. So we're using the Glazor 923-210, and that's a pretty new clear. It's launched in the low VOC markets, but it's actually been going over so well. I believe they're putting it in the high VOC markets as well. It's just it's got a really nice shine to it. Very, very good clear to use in anywhere you're doing either these kind of jobs or you're doing high-end refinish jobs. So it's been going over really well. And so here we go. The trick on this part here is not to lean into that fender while we're trying to apply our clear over the hood, and we'll have a look after. You can see kind of my flow when I put the camera up top, and you can kind of see exactly how I operate on this job. So you always have a plan of attack, and sometimes you get a little mixed up, especially if you run out of clear at an unexpected point, and you come back and you're trying to figure out exactly where you left off. So you got to try and stay as sharp as possible, and you want to try not to lean into that fender, because that's gonna make a mess, which I've done before, and it's not fun. Actually, the Camaro, I did a 68 Camaro some time ago, green one, and it's on the channel out there somewhere. And I remember I was doing the roof, and I did some body surfing on the door, and I learned my lesson there. So you got to be extra careful, and sometimes it's good to, even if your paint suit's a bit loose, you can wrap some tape around your chest, stomach area, just to make sure nothing falls into it. You can position your airline a little in certain ways. Sometimes it's better to throw it over your shoulder rather than keeping it in front of you, and that'll keep you from bumping the airline into the job, which like I say, I did with the base coat. But it's a little easier with the base coat because you can give it a quick sand, and then you can fix it up pretty easily. The clear coat, it's going to be a sanded polish, which isn't, again, the end of the world, but you want to avoid polishing anytime you can. Alright, so while the rest of this is spraying, I'm going to have a look at some of the comments from the full video and maybe respond to some of the things. So Steve Janko, we used to call them bland yachts and tuna clippers. That job looks great. I'm sure you're spraying for a couple of days. Thanks for a great video. So I let him know that it was about 4 hours of spraying. So it wasn't, it wasn't a few days, but it could have been if you had one booth and you had to do a whole bunch of parts. So what else do we got here? Jimbo and Jimmy, hello. Do you work at that shop, or are you just like me? We paint for extra cash for ever body shop friends at the shop doing them late night hangovers paintings. Okay, that one's a little tough to decipher, but no, I don't typically go out and paint for cash. I do some favors for people, and if it's a really cool job that I want to capture on video, I'll just go spray it, and that's it, man. My takeaway is some cool footage to share with the fine folks here watching our videos. So that's that. Too bad we can't see the finished car. That's coming, don't worry. And let's see, we've got time for, what do we got? One more, maybe? Two more? Three more? Is that water-based base coat? Why, yes, it is. That's generally what we spray for the most part, on a big job especially. We've got some low VOC compliant solvent lines available in Canada, but it's not overly practical for completes. It just dries a little bit too quick for the most part. So, or just the solvents, the way they dry isn't great for big jobs. How is the dieback after it's been sitting 4 to 5 days? Pot Liquor Hound wants to know. On this clear, it's actually phenomenal. Some other production clears, it will die back considerably in 4 to 5. There's actually some production clears where they don't recommend baking, and then if you bake them, they will 923-240. That's one of the examples, and I get a lot of people complain that it dies back, but it's usually because they bake it, and it's not meant to. But yeah, some clears will die back. It depends on a few different things too. I mean, if you put it on way too heavy or too skinny, certain clears not enough or too much, you're gonna have a little bit of pinch up and die back. But this clear is actually pretty user friendly, and there's not too many wrong ways to spray it. Adam says he uses stat guns for aircraft painting, but he's not a fan. Use it on your face mask, no overspray. Oh, okay, interesting. Good tip. Anti-static gun on the face mask. Never thought of that. And those air movers on the wall pretty good. Flash time reduced on waterborne. The ones on the wall, let me see. Oh, the quads. We've got the quads. Yeah, so I'm spraying right now. So I'm going to jump back in here. I can talk about the quads. Now, usually, the quads work pretty well. The problem is, a lot of times they don't get maintained properly, and people stop using them altogether because they just get covered in overspray and they're too lazy to maintain them. So whenever I go into a booth like this, I tend to try and avoid the quads, just because I never know if I turn them on, are they going to fire a ton of dirt into the job. And I think on this one I'll probably hit the bake switch and just flash it off with some heat rather than that. On smaller jobs, there's some cool blowers. Actually, Gabe at Motivated Painters, he actually sells them there, and there's little handheld units, and they work really well. Actually, not necessarily a small job. This job here I think is too big for that, but you probably go 2 panel jobs you might be practical on. But just looks like a little mini air rake, and he sells some there and supports his channel. So if you're looking for something to flash off the base that's pretty easy, and you don't have to worry about dust and stuff flying out, that's a good option. Alright, so let's have another look here at our Lincoln. See, we're working around that beast with our clear coat here. So we're going to put 2 coats of clear on this thing, and call her a day. So we're getting around, we're almost there. So we'll always look kind of down the side of it. So you got to get down and look at different angles to see how wet the clear is going on, especially when you've got a gun you're not overly familiar with. And certain clear coat combinations, it's just, if you're spraying day in, day out with the same gun, the same clear, it's a little easier to understand exactly how it's going to flow out. But even then, it's good just to kind of look up and down your panel in certain ways, just to make sure that you don't have any dry spray, because if you don't put it on wet enough, you're going to have to polish it out, and it's just an unnecessary headache. So let's see, I think we've got time for one more quick one before we've got on a different subject. How would you recommend blending a hood? I will be painting only front portion with base coat. Should I clear it also front portion or full hood? Well, you should definitely clear the entire hood. You never want to blend the clear on a hood, just because the way the sun comes down, it's going to beat that edge down. You want to avoid blending clear anytime you can. Blending a hood is very tricky, I will say that, especially with you're trying to blend a silver. Some guys actually they'll just end up painting the whole front end because it's that tough. You want to use a wet bed or orientation coat anytime you're trying that, and if you have some body lines to go off like this one here, sorry that you were missing it now, but on the front edge, try and lose your color on those body lines. It's probably the best advice I can give on that. Other than that, if you have a good rotisserie stand, it's sometimes easier just to have it vertical, and then you can just blend it out that way. Just when you're trying to blend a silver or a challenging color on a panel like that, it can definitely be tricky. So I would try to take some of that advice, and hopefully that helps you out. But that's it. We've got everything sprayed here and looking pretty slick. So we'll go around this one more time. I'll show you some pictures here of this job completed and assembled. I know it took a few weeks after I painted it before they had it all put back together. They had to do some work with the interior. I think they replaced a few things, but it came out looking pretty slick. So let's have a look. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there were a lot of other people more involved in this job than I was, so I know it's easy to focus on the paint job because it's generally the most exciting part, but there was a lot of work done by some talented body men and the prep department to get this thing to the point that it's at for me to come knock it out of the park with the paint job. So that is important. So I'm actually going to have a link. There's a guy, Cuddy Customs. He's got a Facebook page, and one of the body men that worked on this, and has a lot of cool vehicles that he's done. So a link to that in the description. But I guess that's going to be it for this job. But before we go, I want to talk about a few other things. Now, I've talked a little bit about this already on Instagram and whatnot. So this was an awesome event that I was a part of with 3M at the Woodward Dream Cruise, one of the biggest car show in North America. And we went and created some art panels with some really, really talented people. We see the Foos is there. There's Connie from Girls Behind the Gun. There was a lot of really, really talented people. I got to hang out with some of my faves, Kristen from Collision Hub, and see some really cool vehicles. So there will be some more coverage coming on that as soon as I get all of this footage together, and we can talk about some really interesting things I saw down there. And there's Candy and Chrome from Instagram, Pablo, who did, that's one of the vehicles he did that showed up at the show, and his hood behind him. Some really talented guys, I mean, when it comes to custom paint, and more talent in their pinky finger than I have in my entire body as a refinish guy. But if it comes to a blend off, I mean, I'm coming out on top. But anyway, that was something pretty cool. You can find some really cool write-ups on it in, there's Collision Repair Mag, I think Fender, I can't remember what that one's called. I'll put some links in the description. I'll find some for you if you want to read up on it. But there should be some cool coverage coming out from, here, 3M Collision Hub. And you can look forward to some really cool stuff. And one other thing I need to mention before I let you go is that you can now support our channel and look awesome doing so by grabbing yourselves one of these Refinish Network Paint Boss t-shirts that you can pick up off our website. Along with some other cool stuff. Just click on the shop icon, and that's going to go a long way to help these sweet videos keep on coming. In the meantime, you can also like us on Instagram and Facebook, or follow us and share the crap out of everything, because that stuff goes a long way. So thanks again for all the love, everyone, and we will see you next time.